When I first started in gaming, the way I found to do games was kind of a fun accident. I've always enjoyed games. I didn't think there was a lot that I can add because at that time, pretty much most of the sound was FM. And I knew how to program FM. I just, it was kind of laborious. And when I started seeing audio, actually using sound files, I started getting a little bit interested in it. And then there was a workstation I was using called Waveframe. And one of the heads of engineering for Waveframe had a buddy of his who just bought a brand new company. And he goes, you guys should hook up and get to know each other. So, and see maybe if there's some work you can do. So I went to this company and it was 10 guys. And they said, hey, we're starting this brand new company. We just bought a license and we're trying to get the company started and we're working our way through it. And we'd love to work with you and find a way we can do it. And the gentleman's name was Bobby. And the company was called Activision. So when it first started, we all kind of got together and we said, yeah, I think we can help you. And that time I was heavily doing movies. And that's how we started our initial relationship. And we did a 3-year deal where we would do all the games for the first 3 years. In all industries, whether it's film or games, the ability to network is crucial because you need to know where you need to be or who's got a need, how you can fill it, or just enjoy hanging with somebody. Sometimes, one of the things we do is VO. And I met a guy who at that time was doing Q Sound. And he was just bopping around machines, running around town. I was doing film design, and I became friends with this guy, a guy named Buzz Burrows. And then one day he said, hey, I'm over at Sony. And I kept saying, well, we want to do sound for you. And he's like, we'll see an opportunity. So we went several years, just became friends, just no work. One day Buzz says to me, hey, you're still doing the game sound? I said, yeah. He goes, do you do VO? And I went, sure. Sure, we could do that. He goes, could you be a SAG signature? I said, sure, we could do that. So then he goes, okay, well, if you could do that, then I want to give you all our Sony work. So we said, great. We just started a VO department. And that's kind of how our VO department started. And then little by little, I've hired different clients. I had a lot of clients. And because you become friends with them and they find they're out of a job or the company changed or the evolution changed. So a lot of times I'll bring on my buddies who are a lot of times my clients. And it creates a community of people that move around. And same thing in film. I mean, it's almost like every handful of years you step up, you take a step to your right and sit back down in another seat. And it keeps evolving that way. And I think that, some people decide to get out of the business eventually. The business is very demanding. But for those people that keep doing it, it's kind of fun because, I've been doing it for a while now. And I mean, one of my first E3s, it was E3. I was sitting over at the Intel tent. And a guy sits next to me and, and have you done this? I said, no. Have you done it? He said, no. And so we just started talking and spent the day. And I said, well, what do you do? He goes, I do jingles from Chicago. And we sat there and said, wow. And I said, I do movies in California, And the guy was Marty O'Donnell. And we just became really good friends. And what's kind of fun is you get to grow up together and you get to see an industry mature. I mean, I met you at Virgin. And we were just going around to all the game companies in Orange County. And again, you start meeting people, you get in relationships, you start talking. Sometimes you're competing against each other, and that's okay. But you're just trying to create a community. You're trying to understand where's the bar, where could we go, how do we have a living? How do we create a living within an industry? I get asked a lot, how do I get in the video game industry? My recommendation is kind of couple simple things. First thing is passion. You got to want to do it. We put in way too many hours, and it's way too hard, to be honest, to just, do it. It's too hard. I don't want to do it. You got to be a little nuts. So I think you've just got to want it, and you've got to be kind of wired for it. And if it's something that you just love doing, like I still figure out, what am I going to do when I have to get a job? Because I've been doing it for a long time, and for me, I get paid to play. It's hard play, don't get me wrong. And there's times you want to, pull your hair out. But I think that ultimately you got to love what you do. You got to have a passion for it. You got to feel most of the time that you want to bring something to the game, something new. You want to fight. You want to swim upstream. I think that if you're in the entertainment business, whether it's movies or games, you have to know how to swim upstream because you're never going to go downstream. It's never going to be that easy. And even if you succeed, then you've got to stay successful. And there's ebbs and turns in technology and life issues and family issues and issues of every shape and size. So I think the thing is, how do you get in, network, have a passion? Because if you have passion and you network, you're going to learn because you're going to love what you do. And you're going to want to keep learning. You're going to want to keep getting better. And if you get better, you might get at the top of your game or be one of those people that are known as an innovator or somebody that keeps pushing the bar. I get asked a lot how to approach a project. Let's talk about linear for the moment because it's a little bit easier to explain. When I read a script, I don't know why, but I have this ability to hear the soundtrack in my head. So I'll read a script and then I interview for a project. I can literally act out and perform the project to them. I don't know. I mean, it comes off the page or when I see a cut and I look at it. Here's the thing I think is, as a musician myself, I went to music school, did the whole thing as a guitar player. And you want to find and learn how to play all the notes, whether you play them fast and all that. Well, sometimes you've got to decide what your role is and what you want to be. For me, I'm actually a storyteller more than anything else. I just use audio as the way to tell a story. So I don't really care about the tools. I care about what I want to say. So it's like a composer. There's all these notes you want to say. But the ones you choose, whether it's minimalism like when I did American Beauty, I interviewed for it and I loved the script. And when I was meeting with Sam, I basically said, what you need is silence. This should be quiet. This is about negative space. This is about not what I can put in, but the choices I choose not to put in. And I go a different direction. When I looked at Pacific Rim, I got 25 story creatures that are duking it out. That's got to be awesome. It's got to be big, and you got to feel it. You got to be part of it. Every story, every project is its own life, its own being. And you want to be true to what it is. It's not about what I can do. It's not about showing my chops. It's not about me showing my knowledge and showing everybody in the world to prove myself as a creative audio artist. It really comes down to choosing the right brushes you choose to paint with and let the project tell you what it wants to be. Whether it's a game, whether it's cute and giggly. I've done a lot of stuff on Plants vs. Zombies. It's fun. It's goofy. It's giggly. It's weird. And or Gears of War, where it's it's all of a sudden it's attitude-y. It's hard. It's got that feel. So when you look at the project, whether it's a game, whether it's a movie, you got to figure out what you want to accomplish. You got to figure out what you want to say, not just what could be said. But what you want to say, great, you got all the colors, you got all the palettes, you got all the notes, you got everything in front of you. It doesn't mean you need to use them all. So you then need to figure out how you want to approach it. What do you want to say with the design? What do you want to do? And design isn't just a sound effect. It's not a gunshot. It's not the what I'm doing. It's the why I'm doing it. Why do I want to sound there? Why do I want to do that? Why do I want to do something? I mean, I didn't do it, but I love the vocals for Angry Birds. I thought it was hilarious. It's very simplistic, but dead on. Because it just, I don't know, it just had the right attitude. It felt just right as a simple sound design. You just got to figure out how you want to tell a story. I did Nightcrawler not that long ago. And I went around LA with a 5-channel mic up 2 feet above my car because my goal was to capture the sounds of LA. And I went, I know New York, I know Tokyo, I know even London, LA. And I started listening. What is the sound of LA? And I wanted to make it dynamic. I didn't want to just put some backgrounds up and let it just sit there for a period. So as he's, Jake's driving around, the sound's going. And it comes like, what was that? What was that? So all of a sudden, it was the sounds of LA. And it was such a way where I didn't want it to be cliche where, oh, look, we're in a car and sounds are moving around. Oh, my God, You never want to show the person behind the curtain. You just want the audience, whether it's a game or a movie, to be submersive, to be just totally involved with the project. So they come out going, that was cool. I don't know why, it was just really cool. And they just love it, they enjoy it, and that's what it's about. It's illusions, it's storytelling, it's escapism. It's, my paintbrushes and my art is using sound, and how I use sound, how I decide to use music. When do I want to drop the sound effects and let the music play because the music's got a theme that I need to be heard? Or the music's just pacing. I don't care. It's not saying anything, but I need to keep pace with the rhythm, whether it's a game or a movie. And then I may go, wow, now let me do something different. Let me have the effects do this, or maybe dialogue do that, or stylize it. I love to stylize stuff. Again, every project's different. So how do I approach it? I approach each project uniquely, and I try to find the inner voice of the project and then try to expand on that. When I do video games, I work for many different people. Sometimes I get to work for the game designer, and I actually just can design the whole game. Most of the times I work for an audio team. And my job is to work with the audio director and the audio team to enhance what they can do there. Sometimes we get involved in integration. Most of the times I always make recommendations. So when I look at a game, I'll design a bunch of sounds, and here's how I recommend they be used. I'm not usually there for the end product. It's almost like when I do games in production, I'm not post. Post-production is integration. I got all the assets available, and now I'm going to do something with them. Same thing with the film. You film everything, then you go in post, you edit it down, and that's post. So in the production side of sound, in providing assets, I just got finished with a project that they came to me and said, I want this. I can't talk too much about it. But they wanted something very specific. And I said, but we can do an LCR version, we can move the center around. Hey, and how about we do this? How about we layer it this way and build it that way and look at it from a totally different perspective? And he loved it, and we just went off and we started with this much budget and we went up with that. It's not about the money, it's about the time. It's the same thing, when I talk to a lot of people about sound effects and sound effects for games, I try to form analogies and metaphors that maybe are more easier grasping, because most people really don't know what sound effects are. They just said, I don't know, put a door, put a gun, I hear you trigger it, you're done. And that's the physics of life, but it's kind of boring. So here's my metaphor for sound design and sound effects. It's a drum set, okay? You got one sound for a snare. And you go, great. And we had drum machines that did that. But it was only one sound. So you say, okay, can you randomize the sounds? How about you give me 6 drum hits? Then you do 6 drum hits. And they go, okay, now I can hear it change a little bit. But now, when I hit hard and when I hit soft, I have the same sound. So now what I want you to do is start giving me velocity layers. So now you have 6 sounds at every hit, but now I've got all these levels of hits. How about I do 12 different velocities or pressures of hits? And each one has 5 to 10 variations. Okay, now I got that going. How about we have some room mics? that I can choose. How about an 87? How about a different mic? Now when I hit it, I have choices between when I hit it. Do I want to hear that mic? Do I not? Not only that, that's just a snare. Now I want a piccolo snare. Now I want a different kind of snare. Now I have choices of different snares, each one with many variations and many different layers. So when you look at a gun and you look at a snare drum, it's the same thing. Would you want a same gun? Would you want 5 or 6 variations of gun just rotating around? No. It's not interesting enough. It's not realistic enough. It's not the variations enough. But it depends on what you want to do. So now we get, from drums to guns. So every gun's got to be different. Then you listen to what a gun is. And there's people, I think I don't hear any better than anybody else, but I listen better than most. I hear things. I listen for things. So do you hear the whizzing of a bullet being ejecting from there? Do you hear the magazine change and the bolts changing or how it's going? Do you hear the echoes of the report of the gunshot? I did a movie years ago called JFK, where I had to actually come out with that sound because Oliver didn't want us to know where the audience, where the gunshot came from the grassy knoll. And so again, you want to do variation. Now, if you're creating the Hollow Suite style game, which is, I want it to be real, I want it to be there, I want it to be Black Hawk Down, which we ended up doing, and I want it to be just realistic, then you want to do that. If you want a car, you don't want to put a V8 car on a Lamborghini because that's not the sound of a Lamborghini. Even though a Lamborghini is kind of boring because it's got that high-end turbine, it's not the... So the question becomes, what do you want to do? Now, let's just say, I don't want to be realistic. I don't care. I just want to be cool. So I go back to a Nightcrawler. When I built the car for Jake, he had the little shitty car, and it just sounded really ratty. Then he gets to the Challenger, and it was really kind of cool. That's not what a Challenger sounds like, but I don't care. Because in that system, it is all about his ego, and it's about his testosterone. It growled. I put growls in there. I put all sorts of sounds in there that made him feel important, made it just to give that aggressiveness to the car, because the car is an extension of his ego. So when you go into these projects, you got to do audio philosophy. You got to figure out, how do I push my audience's buttons? How do I manipulate their emotions with the use of sound? And, in the old days, minor keys were considered the tones of the devil because it was dissonant. It wasn't harmonic and consonant. So anytime they heard minor nines and stuff like that, they thought, this is bad. There are instinctual sounds that people have different responses to. My job is to understand that, to learn it, how to put it together. Game, movie, doesn't matter. Are we doing Hollow Suite? Are we doing something way over the top? A big creature comes in and it's just got to be something you go, wow, cool. Or not, or something really small, which would be funny. Question is, what do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? In video games, compared to linear formats, you lose control. You no longer have the control of what I want you to hear. This is how I want you to hear it. Well, tough. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm in a game. I'm going to be interactive. And so the question is, how do you do that? And well, first of all, I don't consider it that hard, because the first thing I understand is, what is the coolest thing I want to do? Is it a cool creature? Is it a cool gun? I kind of go, to build a building, you need a blueprint. I've seen many game people that go in having no clue how they're going to do this, and they figure it out as they go. Brutal, really difficult way to do it. I like to understand, okay, who's my bad guy? Who's my good guy? Who's my adversary? How do I interact with them? Is it with a weapon? Is it with words? What's the conflict? Because everything in life, whether it's composing, designing, games, movies, it's all about tension release and a tease. And I think that I need to understand. So, the question is, how do I do it? Well, you figure out what's your loudest sound. And then you go backwards. Not you don't start with footsteps. You start with the loudest sounds. What are the coolest, biggest sounds? Those are the things that people remember. They don't remember the small stuff. And it's kind of like you got to start with a cake. If you want to start with flowers and icing, I'm sorry, but you got no cake. So you got to establish what the cake is and what is the core of the project, of the game, and then build around that. And then you need to understand, in the olden days, it was very frustrating in gaming where everyone had wanted to normalize everything. We want to normalize it. And you're like, okay, my crickets are as loud as my gunshots. This is ridiculous. And then what always happened was everybody got all the sounds together and they painted themselves into a corner because now they only have 1 week to integrate it all. They don't have the time, and all the sounds all over the place because there was no blueprint of how to get there. Well, there are different levels and volume levels of every sound. What is that role of that sound? It's a painting. Does everything need to be crazy bright? Or does things have to have contrast? It's audio contrast. So some sounds will have their place. Sometimes it's the little squiggle in the back of the room. It's all it's going to be. So you have to identify what the sounds are before you even make them. You have to understand the role. It's like a play. What is the role of that sound in this project? So when you get to the game and you start putting it together, you're hopefully 70% there just conceptually. Then you've got to decide what the conflict's going to be. I think the challenge in gaming is it works on a physics-based engine, which means two things collide, I trigger a sound. So if I've got a creature with 20 feet, I'm going to hear 20 feet. I don't need to hear 20 feet. I'm going to hear 20 feet. There's 20 collisions. Well, that's when you got to start making decisions like, is that just too much? Does it create too much mud? So you've got to be able to understand what you need to go without. But you need to know going in what you're going to have a problem with. Again, for me, I've been doing it for so long that we can just have an intellectual conversation about the creation of a game if you're a client, and I can tell you what you're not going to do, what you don't want to do before we even start. Because I automatically know that you're going to have problems. But I'm going to say, here we need to focus on this. We need to focus on that. Let's start with that. And how you approach your project is really important. Because if you start, you got to start with vocals. You got to start with the lyrics. You can start with the little flourishes of music, and it doesn't mean anything. You got to figure what the core is going to be, and then build off it. And whether it's physics-based, whether it's non-emotional based, how you want to arc a game, then you got to look at health. Oh, let's say I'm dying. If I'm dying, maybe we cut the sound effects off. We put some of the sappy music in, and we go for that pull into the heartstrings because I'm sitting there and I'm dying, there's no way to out of it. I got 20 guys around me, I'll start and shoot. I don't have the energy left. Let's take a different turn. Let's not do physics, let's do an emotional event and then do a whole different way of approaching it. The definition of music is organized noise. So when I see music and I see sound design, actually I don't see a difference. And that's something which is kind of weird for people. I did a film called Alive, and James Newton Howard was the composer. And we did this plane crash. And I wanted it to be very intense, but not cliche. I don't want people like, it was very intense. I rumbled the whole room. I got it. I wanted that to be as loud as I can get the theater to legally be. Because when we stop, I wanted audio deprivation. I wanted bam, hits in here. One little piece of metal, contrast. Then I talked to James and said, hey, what key is the music in? So he gave me the key of the music. I said, great. He had a little guitar thing going. I said, I'm going to pitch the wind right into that key. And then the guitar starts. It's not two separate artists working by themselves. You start off by yourself. But the difference between album music and music for media, if you want to hear every piece of music, every piccolo, every piece, buy the album. Because that is its own medium. But when you take music and you put it against actors and story, it then starts to become an emotional thread, and that's the role it needs to play. And again, I see a lot of very young composers go, listen to my music, isn't it great? The whole point is no one should know your music exists at all. But you should go, God, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel anxious, you're holding the emotional heartstrings with the music. And the composers know not to hit every instrument on every emotion and every effect. They need to go, what is my role in this, whether a game or a movie, and what is my part to play? It's like having an actor look at the camera and go, look, it's me again. It's like, shut up. There's 20 other people with you. You need to have an ensemble. Music is part of the ensemble. You have to hear dialogue. You have to have some kind of story. Sometimes music for games can pace a game, can give a rhythm where your knee starts twitching. And you're playing it because it's making you anxious. Because it's hard, and the music's making you anxious, and it sounds, and then you can start playing with people. You can play with rhythms, you can do different things, and you can stop the music and start the music and give them a rhythmical journey. It's interesting. When I went to film school for a short time, what was great was we studied The Shining. And it was great because the way the dialogue was set, most people don't realize, and this is one of the great subliminal things about music, actors, and everything else, is life has a rhythm. Everyone's got their own internal clock. I tell people, and I tell young students, if you want to know what somebody's thinking, listen to the footsteps. It's like a tip, 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 tip. What's that? Tip, tip, tip. There's so much personality that comes into it. Same thing with music. Same things with the rhythm of acting. So you get a scene, and it's going like this in The Shining. So one actor says, so, what do you think? And the rhythm's, he's delivering his line like this. And then what's so brilliant? So you get one actor who's playing across Jack Nicholson. And he's like, so, what do you think about this? Blah, blah, blah. And he's got this rhythm going. And the audience goes, okay, the internal clock of the rhythm's going like this. Music supporting, Jack goes, well, And what he simply did was he changed the rhythm up. So it's like somebody going, so what happens is, without anybody knowing it, they're uncomfortable because their rhythm is all over the place. Where Jack's just so brilliant is he changes rhythm. So does Billie Holiday as a singer. She plays in and out of rhythm. The masters know how to control rhythm. And rhythm creates tension and release and all different types of things. Great composers know how to play with rhythm. So the thing that you do when you want to mentally make someone uncomfortable, you do rhythms that don't make sense, that don't naturally exist. And when you do that, subliminally, people go, I don't know why, but I'm feeling creepy. I'm getting the creeps. So it's so many great ways, and I think rhythm, whether it's sound effects, whether it's music, or whether it's actors, is a crucial part in a subliminal way of telling a story. My biggest secret is waking up in the morning. And I know it sounds really weird, is I go to bed totally like, oh shit, my career's over. I'm never going to figure this out. I don't know how to do this. And life as we know it shall cease to exist. And then I wake up and I go, ding. Oh shit, I think I know how to do this. So I was doing years ago Godzilla. Not this last one, but the Roland Emmerich one. And it's not just creating the Godzilla roar, but it's everything else and giving it emotion. So we use trumpets, we use metal slides, and just everything I can think of. And it always never came together. It just sounded like different sounds that sort of worked, but didn't quite work. And I sat there for days, and I was panicked. I didn't have much time to do it because I took over some work for someone else, and they're like, okay, you got 4 weeks to do everything. And it sounds like a lot of time, but it wasn't. And we were doing 7 days a week and pretty much eat, live, and breathe in it. And I needed the secret sauce. What was that sauce? Oh, crap. I don't know how to do this. And then, strange enough, Eventide 4000, a multi-band distortion. And that just seemed, because sometimes I didn't want to get it gritty on the top, but I wanted to find a way to give it a little hair. And I found that when I put all the sound effects through it, it was kind of like an SSL compressor. It just kind of homogenized everything, and it made it where it felt like it was a single voice. So yeah, old school, Eventide 4000 multi-band distortion, which was it Fab Filter has one, the Saturn. It's a great little toy. There's so many toys. I mean, there's a lot of guys I love, and I work a lot with. I like the Waves guys. I like the Fab Filter guys. I love the Ozone Isotope guys. Do some amazing stuff. It's like, what lens, what drum do you like? Well, what kind of music am I doing? There's so many great plugins out there, and they keep coming. It's almost like I'm a guitar player and I've gotten heavily into pedals lately. I did the Hoax Effects thing, and now I'm also have a boogie with pedals. And oh my God, what a Pandora's box that's become. Because there's got to be, 5,000 distortions. And 4,999 of them are pretty cool. So, it's like, what's your favorite pedal? And, your head explodes. Same thing with plugins. I mean, there's so much cool stuff out there that, and not only that, you find something cool, you use it, and then you go, God, there's something like Oxford EQ. I love it. I don't love it for sound design, but boy, do I love it for music. So I bought it. I spent a lot of money on it. I was really depressed that I didn't like it. I didn't like what it was doing to certain types of sound effects. And then I said, I got to try it because I spent a lot of money on it, and I feel, I got to get something for it. And I was doing a mix, and I started trying it on music, and I love it on music. There's something very musical about it. And so sometimes go back to your old plugins that you thought you don't like. They're not been cool anymore. It's all the tools, whether it's microphones. I got old mics that I haven't used, and I tried them, and like, oh God, look at that. Listen to that. That's great. So it's all colors in a palette. Depends what you want to do. And there's only so many hours in the day, so it's good to have as many as you can acquire. Somebody asks, what is the pivotal time in your career, and has somebody said something that launched your career? I think for me is somebody telling me that I had no talent and I'd never, be anything in this business. And I was mortified. I was devastated for 12 hours. And then and again, you go back to that passion and you go, yeah, but I got to keep going forward. I got to keep doing it. And, there's so many great people to learn from. I don't care if you're a driver who has an idea and you go, who are you? What a great idea that was. You learn from everybody and everything. I learned from music a lot. A drum hit is the same as a gunshot. So what's a good mic for drums? It's an RE20, a D112, 57s. Yeah, try that. Start there. All the cool things. I'm good friends with a guy named Andrew Sheps. And I love to listen to what he has to say musically, because then it inspires me to post. And we've spoken many, many times. We've done podcasts together. And we use the exact same gear, totally different. And, I'm pushing low and he's trying to get rid of low end to try to get clarity. And he's absolutely brilliant. And but I've learned so much in a very different way, whether you want to do serial parallel plugins and how you want to approach it. I've learned from my guitar. You got a compressor, but sometimes you want to put a little more dry signal in combined with the compression to give a little fatness. So all of these tools, all these tricks from many industries, from many cultures, always add to spark some different way to approach something. As everybody enters the business, when I started, I wanted to be a rock star and maybe a record guy. And everybody starts somewhere. I think the thing that's exciting me in my new journey and my new ventures is with VR. And I think that, I keep talking about storytelling. I keep talking about all this stuff. Now the immersive technology gives you the closest thing to a holosuite. You could be in the room rather than being a voyeur through a window. And I think that the immersiveness, whether it's easy on games. There's a great thing that Chris Milk did, which shows you a Syrian refugee camp in Lebanon. I now know what that's like. I can be in it. I saw the stains on the tent. you can almost smell it because you were there. And you're not distracted by anything because you're in the world. There's no kids, there's no light, there's no dog, there's just submersiveness. And it's a great way escapism. So as you come out and you want to figure out what the next gen is, the VR goggles aren't out yet, but they're coming. It's a brand new industry. And one of the things I have to admit that I've loved, I feel very fortunate that I've had a good career in both movies and games. I feel fortunate that when I was doing games and I'm sorry, when I was doing movies, and then I got into games, I kind of missed the old days in games because it was the wild, wild west. Nobody knew how, there was no way to do anything. It was all like, I don't know, I mean, there was no way to do it. Nobody knew, figured it. They had tools, it didn't really work. Nothing really worked, everything kept crashing and but we all found ways of making it work. And it was fun because it really forced you to be on your toes and figure things out. I was at Oculus Connect 2, and it was great. I was listening to the filmmakers said, well, we really want to create VR. The problem is we don't have a camera. It doesn't exist. So we made one, and everyone came out with different ways. So they have to create their own tools. But it's the wild, wild west. People are doing it because they love it, not because they were going to make a lot of money at it at the moment. So if you want to get in the business, VR is a wonderful place to start. And I think it's going to become huge. I think there'll be a generation that hates it. I think there'll be a generation that loves it. My son can't figure out why we can't go to a hotel room and just call up the shows we want. He just doesn't understand, well, what? Well, no, I want to see that. We don't have that. Why not? Just do it. So I think what's happening is I think the industry's changing. I think that as music has had YouTube and the internet to play on, I think now YouTube for video, there's so many ways for people to express themselves in storytelling a picture that it used to have a big studio, Now with music, you can do orchestras on a keyboard that sound really pretty good. Now you can tell little short movies on YouTube and be able to tell your story. It's available. The lines of distribution, the wall is broken down. The studios don't control it anymore. And now people can exert, show their craft, show their art. And it's the wild, wild west yet again. And it's who's going to be the next Spielberg, who's going to be the next Lucas, who's going to be the next pioneers of storytellers. And who are those audio people that are going to support them? That's what's going to be exciting.